Bring it in time on True Hoop. We're very excited to have David Thorpe here. Judy's here. And look, there's Wosny Lambre. You know him as Big Woz. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys, man? Really happy to be here today.
Good, good. We're learning a lot about your beautiful home. Where are you? You're in LA?
Yeah, it's not gonna lie, it is pretty nice. I love it. We live in the boonies here in the valley,
Yeah.
but space-wise, especially somebody who grew up in New York City apartments for at least almost half my life before I moved. This is it's nice. It's nice to have this much space.
Yeah. And I gather the weather's better than New York, too.
Don't even get me started. Do not get me started.
Or are you just never going to come back? Is that the deal?
Look, I tell everybody the same thing. If somebody offered me a shit ton of money, I'm sure I'd be like, yeah, I could live in New York. But outside of a lot of money involved, which I don't anticipate ever happening, that just not going to be a reality for me.
What's the rate of discount, right? So let's say it's like shit ton in New York and 20% less you'd stay in LA, 30%, you know what I mean?
Man, I would have to say something really, I would have to say, yeah, about double.
I was going to guess double. That was my guess.
Let's just say it would take 25,000 to live here comfortably. Yeah, it'd have to be 50 to go to New York for sure.
Okay, so I want to get you a t-shirt that says, New York City, you have to pay me double to live in this shithole, and I want you to learn around your old neighborhood.
Look, I have this conversation with people all the time, right? Like when people are talking about the Knicks job, I think people, like as far as management, I think people discount what it's like to be filthy rich and live in New York. Like if you're making Phil Jackson money or a little bit less than that, which would be like $8-9 million a year, you could carve out a really nice life for yourself.
Yeah.
Living in New York, working for the Knicks, like being in high society, doing whatever the hell you want, right? Now, talking about LeBron and MJ GOAT, I don't think that's going to get me to $9 million a year anytime soon. So
hang in there, man. Let's not judge this too early. Like, let's see where this goes. Yeah.
We'll see.
So it's Sneaker Week. It's Sneaker Week here. We've been talking about sneakers all week. You have written a lot about sneakers.
Yes, I have.
And as a little opener, Ben Aronson, who was here on Monday, wrote a little thing for True Hoop about how the sneaker business works, and he quoted you. Can I read you? Can I read you to you?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Looking fresh is just in our DNA. I think you mean me and you and David, right? That's what you mean there?
I don't think so.
It's part of who we are. Even if you didn't have money, your family, older brothers or cousins or aunts and uncles, they kind of work together to get you a new pair. So anyway, tell me about that. Tell me about this. This sounds like there's a good story in here.
So, man, I can remember a specific pair of Jordan 9s, which I guess would have been 1995. Yeah, 1995. And my cousin was visiting from Florida. And he had been working since he was like 19 years old, right? And he was about to leave. His mom and my mom are first cousins, and they're really close. And so, therefore, he's really close with my mom. And he was about to leave, and he wanted to leave me with something. And he bought me a pair of Jordan 9s. And I'll never forget this, right? Like, I'll never forget getting my hands on these things and being like, wow, this is incredible. Like, you just felt so important and felt like the man. Even like after that, I think the last time a family member bought me a pair of Jordans had to be my freshman year of high school, which would have been February of 2002. This is when Mike came back with the Wizards and all of that, and he had dropped the Jordan 17s, which many people will remember because they came with this fancy, snazzy suitcase and a CD-ROM that you played in your computer, where Tinker Hatfield, the legendary sneaker designer, explains that he used inspirations from Aston Martins and all kinds of architecture and all kinds of shit to design the sneaker. And I just remember, I think this shoe might have cost retail at $180, $190 or something at the time, which was unfathomable at the time. And I just remember being at school, showing up to a football prep rally with my nice St. Francis prep jersey on, and these damn Jordans and just feeling like I was untouchable. And my older cousin bought that for me. You know, like she was about 6 years older than me at the time. She would have been like a sophomore in college or something like that. Sophomore, junior, whatever. But she bought that for me with money from her job for my birthday in February. And so that's the kind of things that you would have to do. Like, you know, you get 40 from your cousin, 40 from your aunt, another 40 from this person, and you get the Jordans until, of course, you could actually work, bag your groceries, doing whatever it took. Like your parents might be like, look, I got a budget of $70 for sneakers. If you could come up with the other 60 somehow, we'll make it work or whatever. And that's the kind of things you had to do to get these sneakers. And the main part that people need to understand, Henry, about like when I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and what I tried to tell Ben, it's like it's not something that you think about, like sneaker culture and wanting to get your hands on hot items. It's like, I remember going to school for the first time in the middle of Pennsylvania and meeting kids who ate deer and hunted. Like, that's their culture. You understand? Like, it's foreign to somebody like me from New York City, but like, they never question the concept of eating deer. They never question, you know, weird looking camo gear. Like, that's
this analogy is not helping me understand.
I'm just telling you, like, that's just what it is. Like, it's just, I can't explain it. It's like, it's just how you come up. Everybody you know is really into this stuff.
Every 13-year-old in the world. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying that's why you meant it's in your DNA. You don't think about your DNA. It's just who you are.
Yes.
You know, Henry, I never thought about this until we started this Sneaker Week conversation. I typically, and Henry knows this, when I've had players get drafted, we have a conversation about money and everything. And it's a pretty serious conversation. And every single player I've had that's been drafted in the first round, when you talk to them, what are they going to do with some of their money? When they talk about buying their parents a car, not a big house, a car, the answer always is, when I say why, Coach, they kept me in those sneakers and it wasn't cheap. But
Wow.
All we could afford was those sneakers to help me fit in. Back when I was first starting to coach, nobody had private coaches. So they weren't trying to pay their parents back for the investment in that.
Yeah.
They just bought me shoes. So I didn't feel so weird. I did my job on the court, but I would have felt weird off the court, but they got me those sneakers. I never thought about that until we started having this conversation. You're right. You can't, the reason why you say is you don't think about the culture, because who thinks about your culture? It's just your life.
It's just what you do every single day. And the sneakers, to be clear, especially when I was growing up, was just an extension of literally what you're wearing, right? Like, I can remember the first time, you know, my same cousin who bought me those 17s came back from the Polo outlet and put me in Polo. I remember the first time I had a Tommy sweater. I remember, like, and all of that is an extension of, like, your appearance. It's like, it's almost like a little game that everybody's playing. Like, oh, where'd you get that? Oh, well, you know, I was in PA visiting some family, and I stopped at this. It's like, it's all a part of this game that we're participating in, what we used to call getting fresh. I guess the kids now call it drip or whatever they're calling it now. But, like, that's just literally every single person you knew. There was nobody you knew who wasn't participating. And that went with everything, the haircut that you got. Like, it literally just is our culture. And then, you know, the culture then coincides with the rise and popularity of rap music, right? And so the culture gets exported out of New York City and into these other places, not just in America, but around the world, to now, you know, we are, like, you realize it now, Henry, like, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, this sneaker thing. And the Last Dance has happened, and I think they did a decently effective job communicating that Nike was a pretty cool creative company, but the powerhouse, the juggernaut that we think of Nike as being today is all tied in with the rise of Jordan and the sale of those sneakers, you know?
You know, one thing I noticed was, like, so my family is English, and we went to England a lot when I was a kid. And when you're visiting English family in England, what they want to do is go to France. So, like, we actually, like, took road trips to France with, like, my aunts and uncles. And being American in France in the 80s was like being trash, right? Like, not cool. Nothing cool about it. Nobody cares about anything, right? And just because of what you're describing, because of a relatively small group of Americans from New York at the time you grew up are cool, are internationally recognized as ahead of the curve on a bunch of cultural things, right? I went to France, I don't know, in the last 5 years with my kids, and literally like the taxi driver was like, oh, like, about the NBA? Like, about, like, then he started rattling off stuff about Yeezys and stuff, right? And I'm like, wow, like this made America cool in the eyes of people in Paris.
Yeah. The snobbiest people in the world, right? Like,
snobbiest people in the world.
And what's so, it's so crazy. And I was explaining this to somebody the other day. Like, when I was in my like early to mid 20s, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a Black woman, and they were explaining to me why like the Black woman, the Black man 1-to-1 doesn't exist when it comes to why we're sensitive about the portrayals of beauty ideals and, how we wear our hair. Like at work, they're telling us to switch it up. Our skin tone is demonized, all of this other shit that we as Black men never deal with. And it hit me automatically. I was like, you know what? The concept that I wasn't beautiful or that I wasn't cool because I was a Black man never existed within me because I had Mike. Because literally, like, the coolest, most important, most, like everybody agreed this dude was a deity. And he was a Black dude, right? And he was a dark-skinned dude like me. And, like, I'm like, wow, like, this isn't, like, Al B. Shore or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
don't we do knocking Al B. That's how I helped get my wife to agree to hang out with me a little bit. Come on now.
David has a couple of sensitivities here that I need you to be aware of.
I'm a lot older than you. He was cool when I was a young man.
Well, what I'm saying is, the light-skinned Black man has been, people got accepted a lot faster.
I got you.
But when Mike came around, he was universally accepted as the coolest, the ideal man, right? And so I never dealt with this idea that a Black dude wouldn't be cool, or a Black dude wouldn't be classy, or a Black dude wouldn't be seen as desirable. And I think all of this stuff ties into one another. And like, Mike exporting the cool of the NBA and basketball in general, but his sneakers, his stuff filtered through the culture, through Spike Lee. And I think that was a genius marriage by Nike, White and Kennedy, Mike, bringing Spike Lee. And Spike Lee's like, look, we're going to do these commercials, but we're going to make it hip hop, right? Like, we're going to fuse the two because the culture is obsessed with this guy's sneakers and everybody's obsessed with the culture. And they fused that thing and they exported it out to the world where, like, you go to Japan right now, there are people like dressing like Run DMC in the 80s or Slick Rick in the 80s, like old school rappers. Like, this is everywhere now. And it's crazy to think, especially as a Black man, where, like, we saw what happened down in South Georgia, all the things that you deal with here in America as a Black dude. And like internationally, like, people are just like, the coolest people on planet Earth are Black. It's just this weird thing that you sort of encounter out there.
Oh my gosh, Jade will tell you, Jade was there for this. Like, we interviewed Stephen Stout years ago in his unbelievable office. And he wrote this really interesting book called The Tanning of America, which he's kind of a marketing guy which touches on a lot of these issues you're talking about. And in the book, one of the words he uses about why this movement succeeded, where so many fail, right? There have been a lot of campaigns that didn't create movements, right? And I'd love your thoughts on why this one worked, but really fast to tell you the story, which is one of the qualities in his description was it had the word dangerous in it, right? Which is not new. This is like James Dean was cool because he was a little dangerous, right? Like, this is not a new idea. And I wanted him to discuss that a little bit, but then it became this weird thing where, like, he wouldn't say it. He wouldn't discuss it with me. He shut it down. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a white guy trying to get a Black guy to say Black guys are dangerous. And he, you know what I mean? Like, it.
Well, this topic is perfect, Henry, for a lot of reasons, right? Like, the concept of danger, it's not that you're a white guy and you think Black people are dangerous.
Exactly.
If you're white and you have absolutely no contact with Black people other than the box in your freaking house, and Ted Koppel's on ABC talking about the ghettos of America, and all you see is slums, and they talk about the crime and the drug abuse and all of that. That's your only access. And then this music comes along where you could sit in your nice living room in Iowa, in the suburbs, and get taken along on a ride through these dangerous places. Like, it feels like, if you're a white suburban person, that you're performing this revolutionary act by just listening to NWA, right? Like, by just accessing hip hop culture. Because again, if you have no access to any black people whatsoever, which a majority of white Americans, that's their life, especially specifically in the 80s and early 90s, when hip hop is sort of taking form commercially, this is your only access. And I think that's what Stout is talking about, like that element of like, this, it's not just dangerous, it's exotic. It has nothing in common with my daily surroundings, and so therefore it's interesting.
It's for sure. Like, so in in Steve's book, it's not that he said danger summarized it. It was just one of the components that worked, right? But like, you know, and I'm not, this is terrible. I moved to New York in 91.
Oh,
and there
man,
was like,
that's scary time still in New York.
Oh, ask him where
it was real. I mean, it was a violent place, and
100%.
it was HIV was like peaking, right? But there was it does traffic a little, like what's cool about it is a little bit this fearless. It plays on this fear scale a little bit. By this, I mean like 91, it was easy to see people who were like just downtrodden, right?
Right.
But every now and again, somebody would like double park their car and blast hip hop and not give a shit about anything, and chest puffed out and talk real loud and like just, and you're like, this is a fearless human being.
Right.
And like, right? And you're like,
but that's
all the rest of us are like, I don't want to get in your way.
No, that's the attitude you had to have in New York City back then. And like you described, because like, so my mom is an immigrant from Haiti. She moved to New York in 1976, right? Pregnant with my older brother. So she lived in New York at the peak of, you know, homicide rates in the high hundreds, close to 1,000. I think it peaked at 1,200 one year, which is like 3 people murdered a freaking day. Like, that's insane to think about in New York now, if you live there, which is one of the safest places on planet Earth. But like, my mom she still conceives of New York as this dangerous place, right?
Yeah.
A buddy of mine bought a condo in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, like I want to say in 2011 or so. And it was already beginning to be gentrified, and, you know, bike lanes are being painted and artisanal coffee shops are opening up. It's already changing. And I remember the day that I told my mom, hey, Mom, you know, one of my best friends, Arthur, he just bought a condo in Bedford-Stuyvesant. She said, why? Why would he do that? That's crazy. You know, because she's thinking about the Bed-Stuy of 1976. Like, it's unfathomable that somebody would punk down, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to live there voluntarily. She was mortified by the idea, but you got to understand, that's the New York City that this culture grew out of. You understand? Like, 1977, 78, when this thing started and was birthed, like, that's what we're talking about. Like, South Bronx, where hip-hop was born, is like one of the most dilapidated neighborhoods you could find at the time. Like, there's a famous like campaign stop that Reagan made in the South Bronx, and he's like in this what looks like, you know, like an Eastern European bombed out place during like the Cold War and shit, and he's just like, yo, this is scary, bro.
Why was he there if he's gonna say that?
Yeah, who knows? You know, and so that's the environment that this culture sort of sprung out of, like these people who had absolutely nothing, sort of, you know, figured out a way. And I think, again, the sneaker culture didn't start with Air Jordans, right? Like, when hip hop started, it already had like Puma Clydes, for instance, which I'm pretty sure is the first signature shoe.
Look at David. David's like, yeah.
I was one of the first big must-have items. The Puma Clydes was a must-have item in early hip hop, right? And people were wearing Diodoras and Asics and all of this stuff. Like, sneaker culture had already existed. And again, like, these sneakers weren't crazy expensive, like $50-$60. But if you had a clean pair on, you got respect, you know, like your appearance had just always mattered. And the Jordan thing was just you know, people don't understand this, but like, it's the perfect marriage between the athlete, Jordan, being the coolest, slickest, just the most amazing, graceful athlete that you could possibly have. The designer, who Tinker Hatfield, like, he's a legend now, but it's not for nothing. Like, the guy's literally revolutionized sneaker design. And so you marry athlete, designer, plus, you know, this little marketing agency out of Portland, Oregon called Wyden & Kennedy, who was just genius marketers. Like, you marry those three things at the perfect time, and that's how you get the explosion that still, you know, lasts to this day. And Ted is clearly not happy with somebody.
Tell me about the sneaker design. I've had, you know, been coaching athletes who are wearing sneakers forever. I never once paid attention to the design part. So how was it different?
I mean, you know, like, even the first shoe, first of all, the Jordan 1, the first shoe, again, I'm not born till 1987.
Oh, I remember the Jordan 1. Okay, I remember that. That was different.
It was different.
That was different.
Did not look like those Converses that Bird and Magic in their bad rap commercial. It didn't look like that. It looked completely different, and they kept pushing the envelope. The Jordan 3, where he's got like elephant print on it, it's like they literally just kept pushing and pushing the envelope, and it blew everything out the water design-wise. Like, they were fearless. They were not worried about conventions and norms. And like, you just look at some of the sneakers that NBA players were wearing at the time. Mike's stuff just looked different. The silhouette was different. It looked more sleek. It wasn't as puffy and bulky as the sneakers that Bird and, again, Converse dominated the NBA, the basketball NBA endorsement space. And Tinker was just and he was encouraged by both Mike and Nike to push the designs as crazy as possible. So you're marrying these like actually revolutionary sneaker designs, like actually a huge departure from the norm. Plus, Nike was playing with technology when it came to the air cushioning in the sneaker. Like, Nike was innovating as well, as far as, you know, the components that go into a sneaker. But they always designed sneakers that didn't look like anything that was happening at the time.
We had yesterday, Adina Jones' husband, Chad Jones, also known as Sneaker Galactus, was on the show. He's like a very plugged in lifetime collector of these things. And we asked, at some point, the Lillard shoes came up, and he was kind of like, oh yeah, it's a bummer. Like, they're really just like for playing basketball.
So I'll say this about Dame's and the thing about, you know, sort of transcending the functionality of a sneaker and converting it into a lifestyle thing. I think a lot of that isn't sneaker design per se. A lot of it is just the story around the sneaker. Mike's sneakers became lifestyle because, again, the design was awesome and revolutionary, but like, it's tied to a revolutionary athlete, right? Yeah. Like, you get to tell yourself that story when you're wearing them. I think if Dame Lillard was seen as a revolutionary athlete, his sneaker would transcend into lifestyle and people would wear them as such. And also, and I think Dame, as an example, is a good one because he's somebody who I know for a fact, talking to people like Nate Jones, who's one of his managers and stuff, he's like, Dame is actually hands-on on his sneakers. He doesn't just cash his check, get the stuff mailed to him, wear him on the court, and move on with his day. He's actually a part of the design component. He's a part of the storytelling component of the shoe. And I think, quite frankly, he's got easily the best Adidas basketball line. Like, Adidas basketball has been, you know, disappointing. Like, as good as they are in the lifestyle side, what they're doing with Kanye West is incredible. Nobody's ever come this close to challenging Jordan sneaker supremacy ever. Kanye's the first person to even come close to Jordan. But what they're doing in basketball, like with the Hardens and some of the other stuff, is bad. But Dame's is the only one that I look at year after year. I'm like, wow, like, this looks like something. This is designed in a way that doesn't feel like just forced and rushed. And I think Dame is the only one over there doing something worthwhile, honestly.
So respect.
What was Kobe's impact on Adidas? Because I remember when he got drafted and signed with Adidas, my younger brother was working for me, and he said, we should invest in Adidas. And I said, I fucking hate Adidas. I don't even remember why I hated them, but I did. he said, yeah, but this guy he's going to be a game changer. And I honestly, I've never really followed that closely. How did Kobe impact that brand sneaker wise?
Man, it's so cool because Kobe, he gets to Adidas and immediately, which is not something that was really happening at the time. Immediately they make him like a signature type of guy, right? Like the Crazy Eights happened his rookie year. Then, people remember the space boots and all these other just like crazy looking Kobe's. But the thing about Kobe that people don't remember is that he was culturally impactful basically from the gate. His second year in the league, he's not starting on the Lakers and gets voted in as an all-star. Like that just straight up wasn't happening, right? He was this transcendent guy. People were drawn to him, interested in him from the start. He had this really flashy game that if you're young and you don't remember Kobe when he first came in, him and Allen Iverson, Iverson gets a lot of credit for the crossovers, but Kobe was doing that too. I remember kids in New York, kids in my neighborhood, because in New York, you never learn how to shoot, you just learn how to dribble. I just remembered people being obsessed with Kobe and Iverson's handle. Like people would tape the game and literally like study film of these guys, where they, how high they brought the ball, what angle to cross people. Like Kobe was capturing the imagination of hoopers everywhere from a very early age. And I think people were drawn to him. And so therefore his sneakers sold. I don't think they were that good looking, but they sold. Like you would see people with Kobe sneakers on because his game just caught on. I know me personally, like I've like latter stages, honestly, 24 Kobe, ground bound Kobe, Kobe doing the whole, like, I yell at my teammates and I shoot 50 times in my last game, performance art stuff. That was never for me. But number 8, Kobe, the guy who nobody could stay in front of, the guy who I remember one time he put a move on Scottie Pippen. And, this is like 12-year-old me. I still think of Scottie as the ultimate defender in the history of life. And I remember watching him put a move on Scottie, and I was like, this dude is an alien. Did you see what this guy just did to Scottie Pippen? And so I think his game and culturally, he just mattered right out the gate.
Have you ever watched Kobe's high school tape?
Never. I've never seen it.
We use the word alien. Well, he basically looks like Giannis does now.
Wow.
I just saw it the other day, and I'm thinking, how does this guy not go number one? Because no one's ever dominated prep basketball the way this guy dominated prep basketball. But before you forget, though, you mentioned the crossover. So you know what the DC crossover is, right?
I do not.
That's the Iverson high, quick.
Okay.
But no one else was as quick as Iverson. So I used to always tell my players, we want them to try the DC crossover. Those guys aren't Iverson. When they go high, they're coming. Just go take it from them.
Right.
You couldn't do that to Iverson, though. AI got it. And Victor Page was really good. He was a great Georgetown player. He had left to right.
I remember Victor Page.
Crossover. They're really high, and then choo. Yeah, I just wondered if you.
Yeah, people were studying AI. People were studying Steph, who I call the original Steph because I'm washed. Stephon Marbury. People were studying God, Sham God. People were studying, obviously Tim Hardaway he got the recognition when you would watch NBA Inside Stuff. People would be like, the killer crossover, my main man. Like Tim Hardaway got the
that's pretty good. The mod you did there. I like that.
Tim Hardaway got the recognition first. But, man, when AI and Kobe came to, I'm telling you, people were just obsessed with how they handled the ball. And Kobe, as his career progressed, it became more substance-based. Like, I'm just going to take the minimal amount of dribbles to get to my spot, to rise over my defender and finish. He pared his game down because, when you're a grown man, you don't got time for the frills anymore.
They all do.
You understand? But, like, early on in his career, Kobe was a park player. He was just so mesmerizing to watch.
Waz, I'm about to have a deep thought that I'd like you to share with me.
Sure, I love it.
It's straight from you. Actually, I just kind of stole it. But so Michael Jordan made you feel inspired in your own skin, right? Like you felt 100%. More valuable to yourself because he existed, right?
100%. The concept of, so like when you grow up in a neighborhood where it's only black people, And in my neighborhood specifically, only Caribbean people, Haitians, Jamaicans, Trinidadians, so only like a specific kind of black people. You don't have a concept of your existence in the world vis-a-vis white people. It doesn't really come in, when you're young.
Yeah.
So like the only white people you come in contact with are on TV, right? So if I only come in contact with white people on TV, and when I turn my TV on, I can watch people like Michael Jordan or Bill Cosby, like I'm not really internalizing the sort of struggles that are out there for people who look like me. I think that's sort of a benefit of growing up in a really, homogenous area. It's like, yo, I don't know what it's like to feel like a second-class citizen, because where I'm at, we're all equal, right? Like my doctor is a black dude, is a Haitian dude, as a matter of fact. My barber is a black dude. The only contact until high school with white people, which becomes an enlightening experience, honestly, is my Catholic school. The nuns and the priests who ran the school were white. Some of my teachers were Italian women and Puerto Rican and black, but like that was my only contact out in East Flatbush with people who weren't black, and more specifically West Indian.
So my thought is there's this game in basketball when we talk about sneakers is basically like, I remember once a prominent NBA agent was saying to me that he was only interested in one player in that draft because there was only one guy who's going to sell sneakers who had the certain kind of qualities to sell sneakers, and that was DeMar DeRozan. And I remember thinking like, I don't know about that. And I couldn't. So what is like it? But I'm thinking that it in this case might be this Jordan quality you're talking about, which is like, young Kobe has an audacity that's not unlike double parking your car in 1991 New York and playing loud music, right? He's just like, 100%. Oh, I belong here, right? Like, 100%. I'm going to make you all feel like you belong here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that like the sneaker thing, because it's evolved in such a way that makes me sad, in the sense that the basketball sneaker market is what drove sneakers into the stratosphere. But nowadays, the most sought-after products, the most sought-after sneakers that aren't Michael Jordan sneakers that he actually played in as a Chicago Bull, aren't basketball sneakers, right? Like there was a time where the dominant sneakers were the signature pennies, or the signature Scottie Pippins or whatever. Those aren't dominant shoes. So I think to bring it back to what you're asking me, I think it's misapplied to even apply it to basketball players anymore. I think the people that move sneakers and move product now are people like Travis Scott and Kanye West, and people that matter in the culture. People like Jerry Lorenzo, who has this streetwear brand called Fear of God, which is probably the most popular streetwear brand in that space right now. He does a collab with Nike where they don't even just ask him to touch up a shoe and like give him a unique Fear of God colorway. They give him his own silhouette, like as if he's Carmelo Anthony or LeBron James, right? I think those people are now who are at the front of pushing sneaker culture. So, the concept that, you might sign the Wiseman kid from Memphis because he's going to be your next sneaker ambassador, I think that's misapplied. I think if anything, and I was talking to DJ Clark Kent, who's like this legendary sneaker guy, like I'm talking about tens of thousands of sneakers owned in his freaking life. He was talking for my piece about Zion Williamson and Jordan and their deal. He was like, look, Zion's not going to sell Jordan sneakers for Jordan, but people are obviously drawn to him, and the affiliation is just as a traditional brand ambassador is worth it, right? Like he goes to that playground in Harlem last summer, and he's in a warm-up. He does a quick, for me, like how I lay up a ball, he does a off 2 feet through the legs, dunks it. These kids go crazy. The clip goes everywhere. Like that's what you signed Zion Williams for, right? To shoot your stuff and your brand to the stratosphere, to everybody. Not that Jordan brand has some name recognition problems, but like Zion gets so much attention in the attention economy, he's worth it for that reason. The concept that Zion or any young guy at this point is going to come and move sneakers just off of the strength of who he is, I find it hard to believe. Like it's going to have to be something lightning in a bottle, like a Steph Curry type of situation back in 15 and 16, which we all saw was very short-lived and is now completely over, you know?
Could Zion, you don't think Zion could support his own brand? He'd have to be an endorser for a Jordan.
I do think if Zion would have took a chance, or not took a chance, or if he would have just went to Nike proper, because that's kind of what the point of my piece was that Jordan Brand has had the pick of the litter as far as NBA athletes are concerned and have done nothing with them in the signature sneaker space. Like, we're talking about celebrities, Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook. These guys are like, they transcend the NBA. Russell Westbrook sits first row in Milan during Fashion Week, in Paris during Fashion Week. Like, he's a part of the greater culture at large in a way that somebody like, I don't know, Bam Adebayo, who's a great NBA player, isn't. You understand what I'm saying? Like, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Blake Griffin, Chris Paul. We're talking about the who's who of the NBA. All Jordan Brand athletes, all got their sort of signature sneaker shot and look, and it went nowhere, right? And my piece was like, if you're a guy who wants to be a signature athlete, I don't know why you would go to Jordan Brand, because they had shots with dudes who bring all of this stuff that you would want in somebody who's going to potentially sell your sneakers, celebrity, name recognition. Do they transcend culture to the point where Westbrook has his own clothing line that sells out? He has a successful clothing line that he built outside of Jordan Brand. And they, for whatever reason, haven't been able to use that to market and sell a story about the Westbrook-Jordan Brand partnership that people are gravitating towards. So I don't think Zion, and that might have to do with you just can't overshadow the jump man. Like, you just can't do it.
That's what I think.
You know, it all comes back to, are you better than Mike? Are you bigger than Mike? No, you'll never be bigger than Mike. And so Zion, I don't think is going to have a chance to carve out his own sort of legacy in that way by being with Jordan Brand. And that's, that's just, but Zion is special though. Like, he's just, people are so drawn to him. He's so magnetic. Maybe he's special enough to transcend that, but like, it would have to be somebody as special as Zion.
Or maybe Ben was kind of musing, like, maybe, I mean, not about Zion particularly, but like, maybe you sign up for with a big brand. Like, if the LeVar Ball approach, a more refined version of it might be, no, go to Nike for a few years, go to Jordan Brand for a few years, and then launch your own thing, right? Once you've got a little money in the bank and you don't have to worry about making it work from day one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in the sneaker space, we always see these flashes of people sort of not challenge Nike, but make a dent culturally for a small amount of time. We saw it with Steph Curry recently that I just cited. We saw it with Grant Hill. People forget this, but Grant Hill, very early in his career, his Fila sneakers mattered. I could tell you in New York City, people wore those first two Grant Hills with pride. And Grant Hill was like the first next Jordan. Like, that kind of helped. He was the first. He was the first guy that people were like, wow, like, he might be carrying the torch. And he had the Sprite commercials, and he's on Home Improvement, and he's doing all of these other things. And so we've seen
Home Improvement.
Yeah. He was on an episode of Home Improvement. We've seen these other sneaker entities rise up but never sustain it. In the case of Under Armour, they kind of got too big for their britches. They really was just feeling themselves like, we're about to take out Nike. It's like, no, you're not. Let's take out Puma perhaps first, or like let's build up towards Nike. And even they would say, in an honest moment, they ramped up way too fast. They got way too excited about the moderate success that they had, and they're seeing the repercussions of that. I think it would be cool to see somebody take a slow and steady approach of building something step by step, because we've never seen somebody do it. Like, even with Puma, and Ben mentioned this in his piece, he talked about strategically they signed Rihanna, which, if you're somebody my age, like, and you've been watching Rihanna since she came out, like, I can literally remember the moment where I'm just like, everything this girl does gets picked up on the streets. Like, I remember these ugly ass gladiator sandals that she pioneered. That's what they were calling them. These sandals that came all the way up to women's knees or whatever. And she wore them somewhere, and they were all over the place. I remember that moment. And I was just like, yo, Rihanna matters to people in a way that most singers don't. Like, they're just not dressing like Mariah Carey and Beyonce and whoever you want to, even Beyonce, who, you know, we won't talk about her clothing line and apparel, but it's not as successful as Rihanna's. Let's just say that. And Puma, very smartly and strategically, said, yo, we're going to partner with Rihanna. Those shoes went out of here. Her apparel sold out, all of that. And she leveraged that into now she's down with, you know, LVMH, which is insane to me to even think about. But when they got into the basketball space, they basically like, we're going to throw money at Jay-Z, sign a bunch of random dudes, try to get celebrities to wear it, and that's our strategy, right? Like, nobody's done a slow, steady, smart approach to trying to challenge Nike and Adidas in any meaningful way. I think New Balance is doing that now because they just got into basketball and they are taking a slow and steady approach, signing guys like Kawhi, signing guys like the Baisley kid, signing guys like DeJounte Murray. They're taking a slow, very slow and calculated approach, and we'll see what it looks like in 5 and 6 years, but you're not going to overtake Nike.
There's like you're walking into the football game in whatever year with your, like, the trick is to make 14-year-old Waz feel magical in walking into the football game, right? It's hard to do that in New Balance right now, but maybe, you know, that takes a lot of rearranging the brand in everybody's minds, right? Like,
yeah, but you know, and New Balance again, like, I think they've been smart about that rearrangement. Like, they do, because now what you see in sneaker culture too is this sort of idea of brand partnerships where Nike, Adidas, New Balance, all of these people are like, Puma, they're like, yo, we're going to just give a check to the guys that are actually making an impact on the street level. Like, instead of, you know, trying to figure out a way to design this in-house to penetrate, no, we're going to go straight to Virgil Abloh at Off-White. And he's at Louis Vuitton, by the way, and say, yo, design our sneakers. We're going to call them the Virgils. And they're selling out, right? You see a Puma do it with a brand like Rude. You see Adidas do it with Kanye West, Pharrell Williams, who Kanye and Pharrell, for somebody my age, these are the style icons of my generation. Like, there's no two ways about it. These are the guys you wanted to look and dress like, period. And Adidas is like, first thing we're going to do to try to get back at Nike is we're not going to go after the John Walls of the world. It's like, no. Let's get Kanye in here. Let's get Pharrell in here. Let's get Pusha T in here and sell people that way. New Balance has done the same. Like, they're partnering with brands like Aimé Leon Dore, which is like a really cool brand out of New York that they do numbers. And New Balance is like, yo, we're going to do a collaboration with you. And so if you're into Aimé Leon Dore and you're one of these cool Soho kids, you're now wearing a thing that says New Balance on you, right? And they're working out a way to reorient exactly what you said, Henry, how people view the brand through these guys that are doing it on the street level. And I think what you're going to see pretty soon here is they're just going to hire these cats. They're just going to hire them full-time, put them on staff like the Virgils. And the funny thing is when Kanye was ranting about this stuff, complaining about his relationship with Nike and how they treated him like a little pissant, even though his sneakers were like killing everybody. And like, you see it now with Adidas where his line is the most successful thing Adidas has ever done in the history of their lives. And Nike basically treated him like he was freaking, you know, Maurice Taylor or something. You know, like he was telling people like, yo, like, our stuff is what's moving culture right now. And I think that's where it's going to go. All of the brands are going in that direction. They're going directly to these influencer types, and we're not talking about people that selling tummy tea on Instagram. Like, Kanye and Pharrell actually influences the behavior of people. When they say, this shoe matters, that shoe is gone. It's not on any shelf. In fact, you can only get it on the secondary market at an extreme markup. I think that's the direction the brands are going to try to, you know, shift people.
Kanye still has that kind of influence?
Oh my goodness. So the Yeezy 350s, right? This silhouette, this model has been out for, I want to say, at least 4 or 5 years. It's been out for a while, this specific silhouette and model. And every time they drop on a Saturday, within seconds, that sneaker no longer exists.
Wow.
It's not on any virtual shelf of any like retailer. It's not on any physical shelves. It's gone. It literally only exists on the secondary market, like places like eBay, StockX, GOAT. Those places, like literally every time he puts out a sneaker, it's gone within seconds. Like it's bought up. And a lot of that has to do with the way the market works now, where not a black market, but the secondary market, like people make careers off of the secondary market now, where their job is to buy and sell sneakers, like same as the stock market, essentially. Like literally, like they buy up a bunch of sneakers with the intention to sell it at a markup.
That's what Chad and Adina basically do. I wonder about one thing, Jordan, ironically, wasn't seen the way he became. He was always very cool and stylish, and of course the best player that we ever saw. But until he started winning, my guys weren't talking about Jordan the same way. In fact, they questioned his ability to win, just like they did KG's and Dirk and LeBron. All they could do was score. That's what they used to say about Jordan too back in the day. But the irony is, as flashy and stylish and cool as he is, we know this about Jordan. He was only about winning, psychopathically only about winning. But that's really what drove the brand through the roof, is he couldn't get beat. Right. So his worship,
he was a superhero.
Worshipped Magic and Bird, because they were no frills. They were about winning only. And so there was that one scene in the doc when he says to Bird, like, "Fuck you, bitch."
Yeah.
But such respect.
Yeah. Mutual
the Dream Team, such respect. Jack McCollum's got his podcast out now, and I know we'll find out more about this. I always thought he retired after 6 because Magic only got 5. Now, I think there was more to it than that now. I realize that. But I'm telling you, he was going to keep playing until he got 6. He had to outdo Magic because he had Magic and reverence. And so my point to you is this. With those celebrities, you can brand yourself that way and sell it, because there is no winning the same way.
Right.
We have such parity in sports. What the Warriors did is incredible, but they only won 2 straight one time.
Right.
It's so hard. What Jordan did is another level.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. Mike and his sneakers were already selling. He's already seen as this cultural figure. Men want to be like him. Women want to be with him. All this kind of stuff, right? Or men want to be with him too. We don't discriminate here on Drew, right? But like, the idea of Mike as a deity, that comes into place after the winning. Right. Like after you vanquish Magic and you vanquish Clyde and you vanquish Chuck, and then you come back and you vanquish everybody all over again. Like that's why I think the retro business that he's created, that literally never existed before this. There was never a business where a company would just resell old models.
Amazing.
Very slightly updated of their old models. And just, that's the business model. We reissue old, we don't even have to hire designers. These things are already designed. Like crazy. We literally have to just make old models again, put them out, and we're making billions in profit every year. Like this shit never even existed as a business model until Mike. I think I think all of that, what you just mentioned, the winning and all of that stuff, feeds right into the legend of Michael Jordan, man. Like, and that's why these sneakers are still must-have items. I think the doc served as perfect propaganda. Like, it's just, you couldn't, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you couldn't come up with better propaganda than this if you were the damn Soviets themselves. You know what I mean? Like, this doc is like,
they probably did it.
It probably helped produce it for sure. Like, it is just like, no. Not only is Mike the baddest, he's the coolest, he's the slickest, he's the most ruthless. He's it, you know?
You know what struck me? We should, Judy, can we add Gerard? I know Gerard's dying to get in here. But the other thing that struck me was David Stern, marketing guru, global league, thinking ahead of the curve. They missed. Like, every single thing Jordan wore has an NBA logo on it, and the NBA can profit from it and license it overseas, except for this much at the bottom of his body, right? And that's the thing that became the multi-billion-dollar business. And they missed on that one.
Well, you know, again, but again, that existed like the concept of selling a sneaker existed, but again, it took Nike, Wyden Kennedy, Jordan, Spike Lee to be like, is it the shoes? It's got to be the shoes, right? Like it took, again, you got to be able to tell a story. The stories matter, right? Like when they got
outmarketed, basically.
Of 100%.
Yeah.
The Bradford Smith and George Karl and all of these, and his varsity coach in high school, and all of these people, they just serve as part of the storytelling mechanism around Michael Jordan and his myth. It's like, this is the story. It doesn't matter that like, come on, Mike, like Bradford Smith, like really? Like
they made it up.
You know what I'm saying?
He never even said good game, Mike. Jordan admitted it. It's literally a fictional narrative.
Jordan just was like, I need to figure out a way to get back as this dude for just being good one night against me, right? Like it's the craziest thing, but it people love it. People eat it up. People eat up the concept that Mike was so maniacally driven, and it's fun to concentrate on that rather than like, you know, the coordination, the speed, the hops, the 6'6"ness of it. Like
it worked as David versus Goliath. He had to be David, when in reality, as we know from Gladwell, David had the advantage the whole time.
The whole time.
What's up, Gerard?
What's up, Woz? What's good, boy?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Can't complain, my guy. Always good to have you talking about sneakers and culture. You know, it's so funny because we, you know, our paths are somewhat similar, right? Like, just I'm slightly older, but East Flatbush, son of West Indian immigrants, the whole nine. I was thinking about something around culture because Jordan Brand, you know, the sneaker, the retro business obviously is where they've gone down the line. That's how we're going to make our money. It was funny. I actually asked Jordan Brand president this in an interview once. I was like, you know, but you got all these signature athletes, to your point was, and you never were able to create a better shoe. He literally goes to me, essentially, son, don't worry about that. We just had $1 billion quarter. We good.
That's that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. Jordan Brand, as far as new, like, until it's proven that they can't put out a pair of Concord 11s and sell out within microseconds, none of this matters. Like they put out 2 million shoes on Christmas Eve or on Black Friday. They will put out 2 million pairs of Jordans and they will sell out in microseconds.
And the value is, right, like all these Carmelos and Russell Westbrooks, like, might blow up at Under Armour like Steph did for a hot second, right?
Right.
They just got to keep them all, like, it's a defensive move, right? Sign them all up just in case they become big.
You know what? That's a beautiful, that's something that I didn't even think about, the value of just keeping them in the house so that they don't blow up elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That you can't kill me from any other, you can only kill yourself here in Jordanland.
Yeah.
I do wonder about Curry's and the Under Armours though, right? Because as you know, like, nobody I know was rocking Curry's like that. The Curry's were popular in the mainstream culture, but not in the urban.
Not in
weren't
the
wearing them there.
Culture.
Right? Not in the culture. They weren't wearing them there. And it's they try to do that reverse thing. Well, if all these people like it, it'll work. And I'm like, nah. Essentially, black people got to be tastemakers. They got to say it's cool. Then 100%. It's going to be hot.
And I think sorry, go ahead.
Steph's unempowering the 14-year-old was. Right?
So,
he's a light-skinned rich kid who grew up with a personal shooting coach, right?
You know what's so funny about that, Henry, is
we don't like that dude.
the funny thing about that is that I don't know how often people are internalizing where a black dude how he grows up. The first time I internalized Steph's upbringing was when, you know, people like Ethan and Marcus were talking about the resentment amongst players towards Steph because they understood his background. Like the average person, I don't think is making that calculation of like, oh, he's this child of an NBA player. It's like, because honestly, like, you still got to be able to hoop.
There's a whole bunch of children of NBA players.
Yeah, man. Like, you still got to be able to hoop.
But he's not, like, you know, you opened with how Jordan made you feel, and included he's dark skinned like you, and there's
Oh well,
probably
I wouldn't have resonated. Resonated.
There's 1,000 other cues too that are subconscious, right? We're just like the way he walks is cool, right?
100%.
Like Steph doesn't send off that. Right? Steph doesn't make you feel like you can rise above.
Henry,
I'm guessing.
I've had this conversation
with
so many people about Steph, and like
have it, Waz, have it. Let's do it.
Look. I look.
Listen, you already say anti is greater than lemonade, which I agree with. So let's roll.
Of course, go. It's a fact. Anti is a much better album than Lemonade. Whatever the Beehive wants to say.
Don't come for us though, Beehive.
I think the thing about Steph that I don't want to say irked me, but that made me recoil in the beginning was I don't know if it was Mark Stein. It was some white NBA reporter. They said, man, I just love that the guy's just so relatable. And that word sent the pang down my neck. Like the way
we gotta call Mark now.
The way that I don't know if it was Mark for real. But the way that it was communicated, it made me stand up in my seat because I'd never heard a media member say that about somebody. Yeah. I'd never heard them say this about Chris Paul. I never heard them say this about LeBron James or Carmelo Anthony. I never heard any white media members call an NBA player relatable until Steph. And I had to sit back and like really analyze like what's happening here to like cause this like groundswell of support with Steph amongst a specific crowd of people. And then the other side of it was like, it felt like to me, and I don't know, and I think I was a little bit too harsh with Steph in this regard. It felt like to me that Steph was leaning into it. That Steph was leaning into the idea of these projections, the shit that is being projected upon him as this wholesome, relatable, down-home,
a humble
Guy.
superstar.
I like the cut of this guy's jib. Like he was leaning into it in a way where he's like, I'm not like them, right? Like it just felt like I love Jesus and I'm a wholesome family man and all. Like he was really leaning into that in a way that it's obvious that the other players didn't like it. It's obvious that like the
except for his teammates.
That was,
except for his teammates, they loved him.
His teammates for 100%. But like at first, and I came around to it like understanding it like these are white people projecting shit onto Steph that he's not actually himself doing.
Right.
But like as a black man, when a lot of the times like I feel like white media members now a little bit more conscious of the fact that they're not from our neighborhoods, they didn't grow up like we do, and they're the people explaining the game and the culture to the majority white fan base. Like now I think white media members are a lot more sensitive about that. But I came of age in a time where they weren't, right? Like I'm like to me, and again, people are gonna say, oh, it's totally different, but I'm just thinking like the contrast between how LeBron picking a new team in 2010 happened and just the freaking heartache in the media was just ridiculous. And I couldn't help but feel like part of it was racialized, right? And then to see Steph just walk up in here, shooting threes with his eyes closed, taunting fans, doing all of that.
Right.
But he's relatable. Oh, he's
the
so humble.
Superstar.
Oh,
right.
he's so grounded. Oh, I'm just like, what the fuck is happening here? But I've sort of come.
Can you write a book about that, please? I want to read the whole book. I want the whole long version of that.
I've been trying to, because I've had this conversation with Ethan and Marcus because they actually know Steph, especially Marcus, who knows Steph personally. And, there's something, and Ethan and Marcus will tell you, there's something to the fact that Steph it's so funny, like Steph has an edgier component to himself that he doesn't let out in public, right. Which is funny to somebody like me, because I remember the other day I went to Westbrook's sneaker launch here in Los Angeles. And, he's a native Los Angeles guy.
No pressure, Roz. We have like 1 minute left.
Okay, and they bus in a bunch of kids from, the Los Angeles inner city. And this dude was beaming. I never actually seen Russell Westbrook outside of the context of a press scrum, but he was the happiest, nicest, just like fun-loving dude you'd ever seen. I'm like, yo, Westbrook's lying to us. He's like a really nice, positive dude. This is crazy. And I think Steph is kind of gone the other way where it's like Westbrook is like he wants people to think that he's this edgy guy. And Steph is like, no, I want people to think that I'm this really nice guy, but I really have a cutting sense of humor and I cut people's asses and all that. I just find that to be so fascinating.
I feel like we could talk for 30 hours, but the file size gets too big and then we can't upload it. It's a whole thing.
Of course.
Anyway, Gerard, David, Judy, Woz, thank you so much, man. I could talk to you forever.
Thank you guys for having me on, man. I hope the TrueHoop community appreciated it, liked it, or whatever. And I just want to send a special thanks to both of you guys because obviously, and I told the first time I talked to you, Henry, that I grew up being sort of an NBA dork, right?
I love that about you. Yeah.
I was reading Insider. I was on TrueHoop. I was on all of that stuff.
No, Woz has encyclopedic knowledge of like Hollinger columns from a decade ago. He picked up every lesson. It's all in there. It's awesome.
Listen, John Hollinger taught these people how to talk about the NBA, how to think about the NBA. I'll die on that hill. All of this possessions data, all of this analytics and all of that. I'll never forget John Hollinger being like, Derrick Rose not that good. Doesn't get to the line. I'll never forget that. That was freaking great. Anyway, I love you guys forever, man. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Right back at you, man. We'll do this again.
All right.